Horrific news. It happened just after 10 o'clock this morning after the downing of an aircraft, an Air India flight due to arrive at London Gatwick Airport carrying 242 passengers and crew, including 2 children, 53 Brits on board that plane. The latest news we break to you just in the last couple of moments, 100 bodies having been taken to hospital. Bodies not walking wounded, but bodies taken to local hospitals in the local area where we've seen this plane crash, Ahmedabad Airport. Now, let's talk to Alex Macheras. He's an aviation consultant and analyst and joins us to talk about this. Good afternoon to you, Alex.
Good afternoon, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. Now, look, for a lot of people, it'll be maybe too early for speculation about what the precise cause of this may be, but in terms of what could cause a plane to basically not fall out of the sky, because judging from the video footage we've seen, there's a huge amount of plane taking off and within a minute, a mayday call, we understand, being made, and then falling out down the sky. Some concerns about mechanical failure, other issues. Without knowing the details of this plane crash, what are the likely or most possible explanations for this horrific crash?
No, Julia, thankfully, something like this is so rare, right? Because we categorically have the safest form of transport. You're safer flying than you are in an elevator.
Yeah.
So something like this happens involving a latest generation aircraft with over 240 on board, because it was a long-haul aircraft operating what should have been a routine long-haul flight. It's going to shake everyone, not just the industry, but the impact will be felt far and wide. The footage, of course, is equally disturbing, because the footage shows this 787 Dreamliner struggling to gain altitude. And immediately, and I've spoken already to some execs at other airlines to get their reaction to this and different safety teams, the priority is going to be finding out why. Why was this 787 just moments after takeoff struggling to gain altitude and then seemingly stalling? And let me just break down really simply what stalling means in air travel and with aircraft, because it's much different to when you stall a car. But stalling is almost as if you were in a car and trying to accelerate up a hill without pushing your foot on the gas. That's almost what stalling is like with an aircraft.
But of course, for a car on the road, you just stop. But that's
right.
That's not what happens for an airliner. Can I just bring in just some breaking news? The local city police commissioner has said there appears to be no survivors from the Air India airliner that crashed. Obviously, trying to rescue people who were in the apartment blocks and residential buildings in this very built-up area outside the perimeter of the airport. But in terms of the airliner itself, that huge explosion, that ball of flames that we saw on the video that we've been showing, that you yourself will have seen, big concern that anyone would have survived. But I suppose just reaction to that I don't think that's sadly going to come as a surprise after seeing those awful scenes.
Unfortunately not. I think when the initial kind of takeaway in those very early moments was, my initial thought was, this is probably going to be one of the most significant air travel aviation disasters, not just for Indian model commercial aviation history, but globally. And to have an aircraft with 10 hours worth of fuel for what should have been a routine flight to London, there are so many things that were going to worsen the likelihood as to whether or not there were going to be survivors from the aircraft, with a whole different set of priorities for the investigators and the rescue teams trying to get survivors for those on the ground too.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to what you were saying in terms of the technicalities. So an aeroplane stalls, they can't gain height. There's some footage of the flaps being at the wrong angle, I think, on the wings of the plane that people are commenting on. What happens then?
Well, again, there's very little that we do know, and we are just going by that footage. But as I say, it does look consistent with a stall. Now, why? Why do aircraft stall? It can be a number of reasons. And what I would caution is that it is typically so many different contributors that come together to form that final outcome, rather than just one thing. Before we say, it's probably the flight crew, or maybe it was the aircraft. It's usually a cocktail, a kind of a mixture of contributors that happen over a period of time that lead to that tragic eventuality. The part that I will specifically laser in on, though, is the aircraft. This is an aircraft that until this morning has never been involved in a fatal accident, has never had a fatality associated with it. And that's not by coincidence. The aircraft has been with Air India for over 10 years. It is the latest gen from Boeing. Boeing, understandably so, will be doing whatever they can over the next few days to try to rule out the role that the aircraft may have played. But it's complex stuff, and it's going to take time.
And again, as you say, it could be complex, could be mechanical failure. There have been, one of the things that cannot bring an aircraft down is a bird strike, or of course we have had incidents where we have pilot error or indeed pilot suicide. That has been the case in the past. So they'll be looking at every possible option, presumably.
Everything. And as we switch from search and rescue to recovery, that focuses less on trying to look for human lives and more on recovery of key components. They'll be looking for the black box, which will be able to tell them what the aircraft was actually doing in those final moments. Typically, Julia, the black box gives us quick answers and perhaps the greatest idea of all within those first few days or weeks. So Boeing are dispatching a team from the US to assist with all of this. And the quest for answers happens really, really quickly.
And it's really important because it's about the whole airline industry. It's not just Boeing, it's not just Air India, the whole air entity. They come together, they want to know answers because they want to keep the rest of us safe.
Well, the 787 Dreamliner, this exact aircraft only. Right now, there are 1,100 of these in service globally. Every day around the world, they carry 500,000 passengers. That's just this aircraft type only. So you can imagine they need answers quickly in order to be able to restore trust in the aircraft.
Or would they ground that fleet of planes?
Right. Right. And of course, if they were to discover that it was something wrong with the aircraft, we've had this before with the 737 MAX, it was an immediate global grounding. Air travel does not take risks. That's why we're the safest form of transport.
Alex Macheras, I so appreciate you joining us. Thank you very much indeed. A really helpful analysis there. Aviation analyst and consultant Alex Macheras there. To come to you very briefly, Philip Ingram, incredible detail from him and analysis, very, very helpful indeed. But the City Police Commissioner in India has said there appear to be no survivors from that Air India airline. I think, having seen that fireball, I think that perhaps that was the expectation, very sadly.
Exactly. The fireball, where it came down, the level of built up, there's no way could an aircraft land safely. And then the pieces of aircraft that there were on the ground.
Yeah, we can see that footage. And 53 Brits of those 242 on board.
Exactly. And we now have to be cognizant of the number of casualties that will be in the ground and hoping that as many have survived as possible.
Absolutely.